3 months flew by since Vivian's sneaky undercover stay at the Ocean View Resort. Now she was back, but this time no fake identity. Everyone knew the boss was coming. As her car pulled up to the entrance, she couldn't help but smile at the changes. The place looked different. Fresh flowers everywhere, sparkling clean windows, and best of all, a doorman who actually looked happy to see guests arrive. "Hey there, Ms. Chen." The young doorman gave her a real smile, not the plastic kind she'd seen before. "Everyone's been talking about your visit all week." "Thanks, Luis," Vivian said, pleased she remembered his name. "Good to see this place again." The lobby buzzed with activity, but not the stressed-out kind of busy she'd seen before. People moved around with purpose but seemed relaxed. No more angry faces or whispered complaints. At the front desk, she spotted Bonnie showing a new hire how to work the computer. "Ms. Chen." "You're here!" Bonnie waved, stepping away from her trainee. "Got your suite all ready for you." "Thanks," Vivian said, noticing something new on Bonnie's uniform. "Looks like you got a promotion." Bonnie's face lit up. "Yeah, Richard made me front desk manager after Harold, decided hotels weren't really his thing after all." Vivian knew what really happened. Harold quit rather than change his ways, and a couple other managers got fired for fighting the new rules. But she'd also brought in 6 new people and put back the original work hours, so nobody was doing the job of 2 people anymore. "You're doing amazing work here," Vivian told her. "The feedback about the front desk is through the roof." "It's not just me," Bonnie said, pointing to her team. "When you have enough hands and actually show people what to do, everything just works better." "I'll throw my stuff in my room and find Richard for our walk-around," Vivian said. "Oh, he's waiting for you in the restaurant. Said breakfast on him today." The restaurant looked completely different. They'd ditched the old name Ocean View Terrace, which was a joke since you could barely see water, and renamed it Coast. Best of all, they'd knocked down a wall to actually show off the beach view. A friendly hostess led Vivian to Richard's table. "Numbers are looking great," Richard said after they said their hellos. "Money's up 22%, and we're only spending about 7% more to make it happen. Even with all the new staff. People don't mind paying more when they're actually treated well," Vivian said as a server approached, a face she definitely recognized. "Hey, Ms. Chen, welcome back." It was Devin, the server who'd been so rude during her undercover stay. But now his smile seemed genuine. "Coffee to start your morning?" "That would be great, thanks." After Devin walked away, Vivian turned to Richard. "Wow, he's like a different person." Richard nodded. "One of our biggest surprises. He came to me right after you left, practically begging for another shot. Said meeting you was a real wake-up call. Now guests actually request him by name." "What about Trey? That guy from the front desk?" Richard's face got serious. "He didn't make it. Some people can change when you give them the chance, but others just won't." Vivian understood completely. Making the hotel better didn't mean keeping everyone, especially people who just weren't cut out for taking care of guests. "How's Patel doing?" she asked, thinking about the one-room service guy who'd been so naturally good at his job. Richard broke into a grin. "He's running food and beverage now. Turns out he's got management written all over him. His team's guest scores are off the charts." Their breakfast arrived. Vivian got the avocado toast she couldn't have during her undercover stay, and it was actually delicious. As they ate, Richard filled her in on all the changes they'd made. The biggest thing wasn't just fixing operations, he explained, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "It was changing how people think around here. We set clear standards, but also told staff they could make their own calls if it meant making guests happier. No more dumb rules about not helping someone because they're not your guest or charging people for extra towels." Vivian nodded. "Did we ever figure out who sent those fake memos with my name on them?" Richard looked uncomfortable. "Your predecessor had this secret cost-cutting thing going that the board never actually approved. Regional managers got pressured to make changes with no paper trail. Some of us," he looked down at his plate, "went along with it because we were worried about our jobs." "That explains a lot," Vivian said, "but not everything. Some people just had bad attitudes." "Attitude comes from the top," Richard said simply. "When the bosses treat workers like they're just expenses to cut, workers treat guests the same way." After breakfast, they walked around the property together. The housekeepers now had reasonable workloads and equipment that actually worked. The maintenance backlog was gone. Even the old concierge desk where Harold used to glare at guests was now a friendly help center, with people who seemed to actually enjoy telling visitors about local attractions. At the end of their tour, Vivian spotted a familiar face at the cafe. Zoe with her bright blue-tipped hair, still making amazing coffee drinks. "Zoe," Vivian called out. "Still making the best coffee around?" Zoe looked up surprised, then broke into a big smile. "Miss Chen?" "Yeah, absolutely. Want a latte? Please. With oat milk, if you remember." "Course I remember," Zoe laughed, already reaching for the oat milk. "Hey, thanks for that idea about the hotel-cafe partnership thing. It's been crazy good for business," Vivian smiled. After her first visit, she'd learned the cafe was struggling money-wise despite their great service. She'd created a program to help independent food places work more closely with the hotels, which helped both sides. "Give me a sec," Richard said, stepping away to help with a guest who seemed confused about checking in. While waiting for her latte, Vivian overheard two guests chatting at a nearby table. "This place is even better than the reviews said," one woman told her friend. "When I was looking up hotels, the old reviews were pretty mixed, but all the recent ones are raving about how great the service is." "I know, right?" Her friend replied. "That front desk lady, Bonnie? She upgraded our room when she heard it was our anniversary. We didn't even have to ask. She just said it was within her authority to make guests extra happy or something like that." Vivian took her perfectly made latte from Zoe, feeling better than any corporate report could ever make her feel. This was real, actual happy guests and staff who seemed proud of their work. When Richard returned, she shared her final decision. "I've seen enough. The improvement plan has clearly succeeded. The quarterly bonus will be approved for all staff." Richard grinned. "That's going to make a lot of people very happy." "They've earned it," Vivian replied. "But we're not done. I want Ocean View to become our flagship property, the standard against which all our hotels are measured." "Ambitious, but achievable now that we've corrected course," Richard agreed. Later that afternoon, as Vivian prepared to leave for her next property visit, she paused in the lobby, watching guests and staff interact with natural ease. The tension and resentment she'd felt during her undercover stay had been replaced with an atmosphere of professional pride and genuine hospitality. Patel approached, now wearing a supervisor's uniform. "Ms. Chen, the staff wanted me to give you this before you left." He handed her a small gift bag. Inside was a framed photograph of the entire hotel team, standing proudly in front of the entrance with a simple message inscribed on the frame. "Thank you for seeing the potential in us." Vivian felt an unexpected lump in her throat. "Please thank everyone for me, Patel. And remember, I'll be back, and next time I might be undercover again." She winked. Patel laughed. "We'll be ready, Ms. Chen. In fact, we hope you do. Every guest deserves the same excellent service, whether they're the CEO or not." As her car pulled away from the Ocean View Resort, Vivian made a note on her phone. "Expand undercover program to all properties. Sometimes the only way to see the truth is through a guest's eyes." The success at Ocean View had proven her approach right. Sometimes the boss needed to be humiliated a little to truly understand what needed to change. In this case, that moment of humility had transformed not just a hotel, but the entire company culture, one guest experience at a time. Vivian woke to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of room 417. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The bland beige walls could have belonged to any hotel chain in any city. Then she remembered she was undercover at her own property, and today would bring more opportunities to see how the Ocean View Resort really operated. After a quick shower in the bathroom with its flickering light and weak water pressure, Vivian dressed in simple black slacks and a navy blouse. Nothing that screamed executive, but neat and professional enough to command a basic level of respect. She pulled her dark hair into a simple bun and applied minimal makeup. Today's mission: breakfast service, followed by some time working in the lobby to observe the front desk staff during peak checkout hours. The hotel restaurant, Ocean View Terrace, despite its name, had only 3 small windows facing the water. The rest of the space looked out on an interior courtyard where maintenance equipment was currently stacked against a wall. A sign at the entrance read, "Please wait to be seated," but no host was present. Vivian stood patiently watching as several staff members hustled past without acknowledging her. After 5 minutes, she approached a server who was refilling coffee at a nearby table. "Excuse me," Vivian said politely. "Is there someone who can seat me for breakfast?" The server, His name tag read Devon, glanced at her with barely concealed impatience. "Host is on break. Just grab any open table." "Thank you," Vivian replied, choosing a small table by one of the few ocean view windows. She observed as Devon continued serving other guests but made no move to approach her table. Two other servers worked the floor, both seemingly avoiding eye contact with her. Finally, a younger server with Liz on her name tag approached, dropping a menu on the table without a word. Before Vivian could speak, Liz had turned away. "Excuse me," Vivian called. "Could I get some coffee, please?" Liz turned back with a sigh. "Regular or decaf?" "Regular with cream on the side, please." With a curt nod, Liz disappeared. Vivian opened the menu, noting several items listed that didn't match the online menu she'd reviewed yesterday. When Liz returned with coffee several minutes later, Vivian was ready to order. "I'd like the avocado toast with poached eggs, please." Liz shook her head. "We're out of avocados." "I see. Is the berry parfait available?" "Yogurt delivery didn't come yesterday." Vivian nodded patiently. "What would you recommend then?" Liz shrugged. "Pancakes are fine. Kitchen can't mess those up too badly." "Pancakes it is then," Vivian said, hiding her dismay at the server's candor about the kitchen's capabilities. While waiting for her food, Vivian observed the restaurant operations. The staffing seemed adequate, with 3 servers for about 15 tables, yet service was inconsistent. Some tables received prompt attention while others waited, seemingly forgotten. A man in a business suit at a corner table had been trying to get his check for several minutes. His raised hand ignored as servers passed by. Vivian's pancakes arrived lukewarm, with a tiny plastic cup of syrup that was barely enough for 1 pancake, let alone the stack of 3. When she asked Liz for additional syrup, the request was met with an eye roll. "I'll see what I can do," Liz muttered before walking away. 10 minutes later, no syrup had appeared and Vivian had eaten her pancakes mostly dry. She managed to flag down Devon for her check. "Your server will bring it," he said dismissively. "She seems quite busy," Vivian noted. "Would it be possible for you to help?" Devon's expression hardened slightly. "That's not how we do things here. Tables are assigned to specific servers. I understand. But in the interest of customer service and look—" "Lady," Devon interrupted, lowering his voice. "We're short-staffed because management keeps cutting hours while expecting more work. So yeah, service isn't great. Take it up with corporate if you have a problem." He walked away before Vivian could respond. She sat stunned, not by his rudeness but by the revealing glimpse into what might be driving the service issues. Staff shortages and cut hours could explain some of the problems, but not the attitude. When Liz finally returned with the check, Vivian decided to probe gently. "Has the hotel always operated this way with server sections?" Liz glanced around before answering. "No. New management changed everything a few months back. Used to be we all helped each other out, but now we get written up if we serve another person's table." Something about accountability metrics. She made air quotes around the corporate term. "That doesn't sound very practical," Vivian observed. "It's not. But the new regional director says it's how corporate wants things done. Nobody's met this new CEO lady, but apparently she's all about efficiency over service. At least that's what filters down to us." Vivian nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for sharing that." After breakfast, she settled into one of the lobby's armchairs with her laptop, positioning herself where she could observe the front desk while appearing to work. The morning checkout rush was in full swing, with a line of guests waiting to settle bills and return keys. Trey from the night before was still on duty, now paired with a different colleague, a middle-aged woman whose name tag read Bonnie. Their contrasting styles were immediately apparent. Bonnie processed guests efficiently but warmly, while Trey maintained the same barely concealed boredom he'd shown Vivian at check-in. A family with 2 small children approached the desk, the parents looking harried after corralling kids and luggage. "Checking out of room 512, the father said, sliding his key cards across the counter to Trey. Trey began tapping at the computer without looking up. "There's a charge from the minibar for 40 $50. "What? We didn't use the minibar," the mother protested. "System says you did," Trey replied flatly. "We have 2 young kids. We specifically avoided the minibar," the father explained. Trey sighed. "I'll need to call housekeeping to verify, and they're busy with room turnovers right now." The family looked increasingly frustrated as their children began to fidget. Vivian noticed Bonnie glancing over with concern as she finished with her own guest. "Is there a problem?" Bonnie asked, stepping over. The father explained the situation again. "I'll take care of this," Bonnie told them with a reassuring smile. "We certainly don't want to charge you for something you didn't use." She quickly removed the charge and processed their checkout while Trey turned to the next guest in line. Vivian made notes on her laptop documenting the interaction. The issue wasn't just poor training, it was a clear difference in attitude and approach between employees, suggesting inconsistent leadership. Her phone buzzed with a text from the regional director. "Meeting room prepped for 10 a.m. Staff thinks it's quarterly performance review. Perfect setup for your reveal." Vivian checked the time. 9:15. She had 45 minutes before the meeting where she would reveal her identity to the hotel management team. Based on what she'd seen so far, it was going to be quite a shock. As she gathered her things, she overheard a heated exchange at the front desk. A guest was complaining about his room's air conditioning, and Trey was becoming increasingly defensive. "Like I said, sir, maintenance is backed up today." "If you'd reported this yesterday—" "I did report it yesterday," the guest insisted. "Twice." "No record of that in our system," Trey said with a shrug. "Nothing I can do." The guest's face reddened. "I'd like to speak to a manager. They're all in meetings this morning, so I'm just supposed to accept a room with no air conditioning? In this heat?" Trey's expression remained impassive. "You could check out early if you're unhappy." Vivian had heard enough. The meeting couldn't come soon enough. As she headed toward the elevator to return to her room and prepare, she made a mental note to start her staff changes with the front desk. First impressions mattered, and right now, the ocean view was making terrible ones. Back in her room, Vivian changed into a more professional outfit, a charcoal pantsuit that she'd packed just for the meeting. She pinned her company badge into the inner pocket of her jacket, ready to reveal when the time came. Her phone showed several missed calls from the office, but those could wait. She needed to focus on the task at hand. With 30 minutes before the meeting, Vivian decided to visit the hotel's coffee shop for a quick caffeine boost. Unlike the restaurant, the small cafe off the lobby appeared well run, with a short line moving efficiently. The barista, a young woman with vibrant blue-tipped hair and a name tag reading Zoe, greeted each customer with genuine warmth. "Good morning. What can I get started for you?" Zoe asked when Vivian reached the counter. "Just a regular latte, please," Vivian replied. "Oh, and do you have non-dairy milk?" "I'm lactose intolerant, absolutely." "We have almond, soy, and oat milk. Do you have a preference?" Vivian smiled at the prompt, helpful response. "Oat milk would be perfect, thank you." "Coming right up. Can I get you anything else?" "Our blueberry scones are freshly baked this morning." "The scone sounds wonderful," Vivian said, thinking that perhaps not all departments of the hotel were struggling with customer service. While waiting for her order, Vivian noticed a group of hotel employees, 3 housekeepers and what appeared to be a maintenance worker, huddled at a corner table, speaking in hushed tones during their break. She couldn't hear their conversation, but their expressions reflected frustration and fatigue. One housekeeper rubbed her wrist, wincing slightly as if in pain. "Here's your latte with oat milk and a blueberry scone," Zoe announced, sliding the items across the counter. "Enjoy." "Thank you," Vivian said. "Quick question. Is the cafe managed differently than the main restaurant?" Zoe looked surprised by the question. "Well, yes, actually. We're a licensed operation within the hotel. Different management structure entirely." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious about the operational differences," Vivian replied. "The service here is excellent." Zoe beamed. "That's nice to hear. Our manager believes in taking care of staff so we can take care of customers. Makes all the difference." With her latte in hand, Vivian found a table near the group of hotel workers, pretending to check emails while discreetly listening to their conversation. "Third time this month they've cut our hours," one housekeeper was saying. "My room count went from 14 to 18, but they expect the same quality in less time." "Tell me about it," the maintenance worker replied. "I've got a backlog of repair tickets that would take a week to clear, but they won't approve overtime." "Did you hear about Patel?" another housekeeper asked. "Written up for wasting resources because he gave a guest extra towels without charging them." Vivian nearly choked on her latte. The one staff member who had provided excellent service was being punished for it. She made a mental note to address this immediately after the meeting. The workers' break ended, and they dispersed just as Vivian's phone buzzed with a message from the regional director. Meeting delayed 15 minutes. Executive team stuck on conference call. With extra time to spare, Vivian decided to visit the concierge desk to test another customer touchpoint. The desk was staffed by a middle-aged man with a precisely trimmed beard and a nameplate reading, Director of Guest Services, Harold Wilson. "Good morning," Vivian greeted him. "I was wondering if you could recommend a good place for dinner tonight. Somewhere with vegetarian options?" Harold barely looked up from his computer. "There's a list of restaurants in the binder in your room." "I was hoping for a personal recommendation," Vivian pressed. "Something a local might suggest." Harold sighed heavily as if her request was an enormous imposition. "There's a place called Greenleaf about 2 miles down the beach. They have salads." His dismissive tone suggested the conversation was over, but Vivian persisted. "What about transportation? Is there a shuttle service or should I call a taxi?" "Taxi stand is outside. Shuttle is for airport runs only." Each answer came with increasing impatience. "I see. And what about—" "Look," Harold interrupted, finally making eye contact with obvious annoyance. "I've got important reports to file this morning. The restaurant list has all this information. Is there anything else?" Vivian maintained her composure. "Actually, yes. I've noticed several service issues during my stay. I'd like to speak with the hotel manager." Harold's expression shifted from annoyed to slightly alarmed. "What kind of issues?" "Room assignment problems, restaurant service deficiencies, maintenance delays reported by other guests," Vivian listed calmly. Harold's face tightened. "Management is in meetings all morning. Very important meetings. Perhaps you could leave a note? When will someone be available?" "Hard to say. Extremely busy day. Corporate visitors." He slid a comment card across the desk. "You can fill this out." "I'd prefer to speak directly with someone in charge," Vivian insisted. "As I said, management is occupied with important matters." His emphasis on important clearly implied her concerns weren't. "They can't be interrupted for routine complaints." Vivian raised an eyebrow. "Are guest concerns considered routine complaints at this hotel?" Harold's expression darkened. "I didn't say that. But there's a proper procedure. The form goes to the appropriate department head, who will address it when time allows." "And how long does that typically take?" 3 to 5 business days for a response. Even for guests who are only staying 3 days total? Harold's jaw tightened. "Those are the procedures set by corporate." "I see. And who at corporate created these procedures?" "The new CEO," Harold replied with obvious disdain. "Some hotshot who's never worked a day on the front lines. Making changes without understanding how things actually work." Vivian nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you for your candor, Harold. I'll be sure to include this conversation in my feedback." As she walked away, she noticed Harold picking up the phone, speaking urgently to someone while glancing in her direction. Word of a difficult guest was likely spreading. Good. Let them prepare for her complaints. They had no idea what was really coming. Vivian checked her watch. 5 minutes until the meeting. She made her way to the executive conference room on the mezzanine level, her mind racing with all she'd learned. The problems ran deeper than she'd initially suspected. Not just individual attitude issues, but systemic flaws in management training and corporate communication. Outside the conference room, voices drifted through the partially open door. She paused to listen. "Just saying we should push back on these new policies," someone was arguing. "Staff morale is at an all-time low." "And tell corporate what exactly?" A woman's voice replied. "Sorry, we don't want to implement the new CEO's brilliant ideas because our staff doesn't like change?" "These aren't just changes, Diane. They're impossible expectations. The front desk is drowning in complaints." "Well, the almighty Patricia Chen hasn't bothered to visit and see for herself, has she? Just sends down edicts from her corporate tower and expects us to make magic happen with half the resources." Vivian smiled slightly. They had her name wrong, but the sentiment was clear. Time to make her entrance. She straightened her jacket, touched the badge in her pocket, and pushed open the door. The conference room fell silent as Vivian pushed open the door. 8 people sat around the large oval table, all turning to stare at the unexpected visitor. Vivian recognized some faces: Harold from the concierge desk, Bonnie from the front desk, and a few others she'd observed during her stay. At the head of the table sat a tall man in an expensive suit who Vivian knew was Richard Powell, the regional director. "I'm sorry," said a woman Vivian hadn't met before. "This is a private meeting." Richard rose from his chair with a barely concealed smile. "Actually, Diane, this guest is expected." He turned to the others. "Everyone, please allow me to introduce the complainer from the concierge desk." Harold interrupted, his face flushing. "Sir, I was just about to mention that we have a guest with some concerns. I didn't realize you'd invited her to the meeting." Richard's smile widened. "I didn't just invite her. In fact, she called this meeting." He gestured to Vivian. "Would you like to introduce yourself?" Vivian stepped forward, reaching into her jacket pocket to retrieve her company ID badge. She pinned it to her lapel where the gold letters gleamed under the conference room lights. Vivian Chen, Chief Executive Officer. The silence in the room deepened, becoming almost physical. Harold's mouth fell open. Diane's face drained of color. Bonnie covered her mouth with one hand. "Good morning, everyone," Vivian said calmly. "I believe there's been some confusion about my identity. My name is Vivian Chen, and as of 6 weeks ago, I'm the new CEO of Coastal Luxury Properties, including this hotel." A man at the far end of the table chuckled nervously. "This is a joke, right? Some kind of training exercise?" Richard shook his head. "No joke, Pete. Ms. Chen contacted me last week about her plans to visit unannounced. Only I knew her true identity." Vivian took an empty seat at the table. "I want to thank Richard for keeping my secret, and I want to thank all of you for giving me an unfiltered view of how this hotel actually operates." She opened her notebook. "Over the past 24 hours, I've experienced our service as our guests do. To say I have concerns would be an understatement." Harold shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Ms. Chen, if I had known—" Vivian held up a hand. "That's precisely the point, Harold. You shouldn't need to know who I am to provide good service. No guest should be told their concerns aren't important enough for management's attention." Harold's face reddened further as others at the table glanced at him. "But before we go further," Vivian continued, "I want to clarify something I've heard repeatedly during my stay. There seems to be a belief that I, or Patricia Chen as some of you have been calling me, have implemented policies that have made your jobs more difficult. Policies like cutting staff hours while increasing workloads, prohibiting staff from helping with tables outside their section, or writing up employees for providing extra amenities to guests." She looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. "I have authorized none of these changes. In fact, I've spent my first 6 weeks reviewing our financial statements and customer satisfaction metrics, trying to understand why this property's ratings have declined so dramatically over the past 6 months." Diane cleared her throat. "With all due respect, Ms. Chen, we received memos stating these changes came directly from corporate leadership. From you. May I see these memos?" Richard quickly pulled several documents from his portfolio and passed them to Vivian. She scanned them, her expression darkening. "These do appear to come from corporate, but they don't carry my signature or approval code," she noted. "Richard, I'll need a complete audit of all policy changes implemented in the last 6 months." She turned back to the group. "But that's a separate issue. Right now, I want to discuss what I've experienced as a guest." Over the next 15 minutes, Vivian detailed every service failure she'd encountered, from check-in to room issues, from restaurant service to the concierge desk. She spoke without anger, laying out facts in a calm, measured tone that somehow made the failures seem even more serious. "The most concerning part," she concluded, "isn't the operational issues. It's the attitude I encountered from many, though not all, staff members. There's a pervasive sense that guests are inconveniences rather than the reason we exist as a business." The room remained silent. A few people stared at the table, unable to meet her gaze. "However," Vivian continued, her tone softening slightly, "I don't believe this is entirely your fault. Based on what I've seen and heard, there appear to be serious problems with how this hotel is being managed, how resources are being allocated, and how policies are being communicated and implemented." She turned to Richard. "The regional office needs to take responsibility for its role in these failures. When staff are overworked, under-resourced, and operating under policies that prioritize short-term cost-cutting over guest satisfaction, service will inevitably suffer." Richard nodded stiffly. "I understand, Ms. Chen. We'll conduct a full review of—" "We're beyond the review stage," Vivian interrupted. "I've seen enough to know immediate changes are needed." She turned back to the group. Starting today, all policies implemented in the last 6 months are suspended pending my personal review. We're returning to previous staffing levels and service standards immediately. The tension in the room noticeably eased, with several staff members exchanging hopeful glances. That said, Vivian continued, personal attitude and commitment to service excellence are non-negotiable. Some of what I experienced goes beyond policy issues to basic professionalism and courtesy. Her gaze settled on Harold, who squirmed uncomfortably. I don't expect perfection, Vivian said, but I do expect every employee to treat guests with respect and to make sincere efforts to address their concerns. Those unwilling to meet this basic standard won't have a place in our organization moving forward. She closed her notebook and stood up. I'll be staying another 2 days to oversee the initial changes. Richard will remain here for 2 weeks to help implement a comprehensive service recovery plan. I expect daily progress reports. As she prepared to leave, Bonnie raised her hand tentatively. Ms. Chen, may I ask a question? Of course. Why did you do this? Come in undercover, I mean? Most executives would just read the reports or maybe schedule an official visit. Vivian smiled slightly. Reports don't tell you how it feels to be dismissed by the concierge. They don't capture the frustration of waiting 15 minutes for syrup that never arrives. And official visits only show you what people want you to see. She paused. Besides, I started my career as a housekeeper at a hotel much like this one. I know the difference between unavoidable service challenges and simple indifference. I wanted to see which we were dealing with here. Pete, the manager who had thought her appearance was a joke, leaned forward. And what's your conclusion? That we have significant problems but also significant potential, Vivian replied. I saw some genuinely good service alongside the bad. Patel in room service, Zoe in the cafe, and yes, Bonnie at the front desk, all demonstrated what great hospitality should look like. She moved toward the door but turned back one last time. My job is to ensure every guest receives that level of service every time. And starting right now, that's exactly what we're going to deliver. I'll see you all at tomorrow's morning briefing, 8 a.m. sharp. As the door closed behind her, the stunned silence in the conference room gave way to an eruption of whispered conversations. No one noticed Richard smiling slightly as he began reorganizing his notes. Things were about to change at the Ocean View Resort, and despite the uncomfortable meeting, he suspected the changes would be for the better.